Hello everybody, I'm Dan. Welcome to my Java and Raspberry Pi programming tutorial series. The order in which my tutorials are organized on both my website at pijava.com and my YouTube playlist is designed to maximize learning by building on concepts from prior tutorials. This tutorial is about my Land Cruiser remote control, and basically I'm going to be running a socket server on the Raspberry Pi. Android's going to run the remote control client, and this is part one. First things first, let's pop over to my website, pijava.com, select Pi Programming, scroll down to the remote control part one. So in this tutorial, I'm going to lay the foundation for the remote control portion of the Land Cruiser project. I will be creating an RC server Java program that will be running on the Raspberry Pi. I will also create an Android client program that will connect to the RC server socket to control the steering. Now, at a bare minimum, you will need to have completed the following tutorials because I will be using concepts, classes, and source code from each of them. The JNI, C++, and PigPile steering. I'm going to be using the steering class there. Server socket and socket, you just need to know what those two Java classes do. And then this one here just talked a little bit about communications there. So you will need an Android phone, preferably with the ability to become a Wi-Fi access point, in other words, a hotspot. Furthermore, you will need to have Android Studio installed as well, and I got a link for that right there. Now, once you have installed Android Studio, be sure to Google some instructions on how to put your Android phone into developer mode. Now, be sure to enable USB debugging through developer mode option, and try to run a simple Hello World app on your phone while connected via USB cable to your computer. And this may sound like a lot, but it really actually isn't too bad. Now, if you get that far, then you are good to go for the rest of this tutorial. If you have never programmed Android before, don't worry about that too much. Android programming is done using Java. Let's talk about the Wi-Fi connection. So there are a couple ways we can set up the Wi-Fi connection between the Raspberry Pi and the Android device. We can set the Raspberry Pi as the hotspot and have the Android connect to the Raspberry Pi. Now, this option requires some software installation and a bunch of configuration changes, plus a little luck. Oh, and there is the issue we will lose our internet connectivity on both the Android and the Pi because the Pi will not be connected to the internet. That would be a problem for this tutorial. So at some point later on, we will set up the Pi as the hotspot, but we'll take that, and that'll take an entire tutorial in itself. So for now, I'll keep it simple and just set up the Android device as the hotspot and connect the Raspberry Pi to it. I will connect an Ethernet cable to the Pi and remote desktop into it. Now from there, I will connect the Wi-Fi to the Android and get the IP address of the Pi. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Pull up my webcam here and just do a quick refocus. Let's get my Raspberry Pi running up here. Battery pack, you can probably see it's the orange thing down here. So it's powered off of the phone bank charger there, the 2.1 amp 5 volt output. I got my Ethernet cable running into the Raspberry Pi network port there. This jumbled mess of wires is the same configuration from the steering video. And let me pull up my Wi-Fi settings here. Do a refocus here. Okay, so got the hotspot enabled on my Galaxy S7 Edge here, and connected devices, Raspberry Pi. We can see that the IP address for that is, refocus, 192.168.43.131. Okay, we're going to need to know that later on. We'll go over a couple of things here before that there. Alright, let's go ahead and remote into the Raspberry Pi here. I've already got the website set up so we can cut and paste and get that server code started as soon as possible here. Now, what I'm going to do here first is just go ahead and type in ifconfig. That'll show all of our IP address stuff. So the Ethernet cable has got 10.0.0.226. As you can see, that's what I'm remoted into. The wireless LAN, the Wi-Fi, is 192.168.43.131. It's just another way to find out your IP address stuff. Okay, let's come over here. Let's do cd java, cd land cruiser, right, which you should have set up from the steering stuff. There's all the steering stuff there. We're going to do leafpad rc server.java, okay? And let's see. Let's come over here and we will cut and or copy and paste. Okay, copy, and let's just paste this here. We're done with the website. I'll go over briefly, quickly what this does here. So what we've got here is these are basically left over from the steering stuff, and I'm using most of that steering, or not the steering, the socket server and server part 1. But basically, I'm creating a new private steering instance variable here of steering type, and on the constructor for the RC servo, I'm actually creating that new steering object, and that constructor is invoked right here. So setting that equal the whole RC server class is a new object there, and I'm still listening on port 4141. Now coming down here, what I'm listening for the socket to come in is PW angle, which is short for pulse width angle. If you remember my other tutorial, I was just basically listening for number, and that was the number that we would determine if it was prime or composite or invalid. Now that will in turn invoke the turn method here, which was my old prime method in the other tutorial there. And turn will simply do the same thing. It'll parse out the integer, everything after 8 characters, as you can see, everything basically coming in here, and it'll check to make sure that it's between the steering right, greater than steering right max, and less than steering right max. So we want it to be a valid angle in between there. We don't want the servo to try to turn it too far. Okay, and then it will in turn invoke the turn wheels class, the Java native class, from our steering class. Okay, so that's basically how that works. All right, let's go ahead and, did I make some change? Oh yeah, I guess I did. Let's save that. All right, let's go ahead and come out here and go Java C, RC server, and then we're going to do, we need super user powers, so sudo Java, I shouldn't say powers privileges, it sounds like a superhero or something. But anyway, super user do Java, and then -d, we need to tell it where that library is, this one right up here, the libsteering.sl, and that's in the current path, of course, but Java needs to know that there. It would be cool if by default the Java virtual machine would check the current path, but you never can assume anything. RC server. Okay. Okay, so now we're listening on port 4141. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of make this a little smaller and go ahead and minimize that. Okay, now what we're going to do is hop over here and create a new Android project, and I am going to call this RC Land Cruiser. And so that'll create a package name, com.pyjava.rclandcruiser. Change company name, company domain to anything that you might have if you have your own website URL, or change it to like your name.com or your dog's name.com. Basically, you just want to put the letters A through Z in lowercase in there, and then of course throw in like a .com on the end. And that's just a package naming convention for Android. All right, let's go ahead and next on this. API 19, I'm running Android 6.01 or something like that. So you always want to make sure that the minimum SDK is less than what you're running. 19 is fine for me. In other words, if you're running, KitKat, don't set your minimum to 21 Lollipop, right? You always want it to be less. All right, we'll do an empty activity, main activity, activity main finish. All right, while this is creating this project, and sometimes that takes just a minute or so to get it done, we'll come over here and I'll talk a little bit about the RC servo class, or RC client class here. Okay, so the RC client class is basically going to be, we're going to create an instance of that in the main activity there for the Android thing there, and you're going to want to make sure that you change this IP address here to whatever your IP address is. And so we'll go ahead and just come down here and copy this real quick there. And so it uses a lot of the code from the socket server, socket part 1 class there from the client thing. And the Android is kind of popping open. Tip of the day. Don't care about that. It's still building the thing. Let me go back to the website here. And so basically when we create that new client object in the constructor, it's going to connect that socket and create our output stream and our input stream that we're going to read and write from. I've got this method here called turn, which we're going to send that PW angle is plus the pulse width parameter that gets sent in there. Now, the write method is the same from that tutorial, and then I've got this method called close up, okay? And that is going to send the final, and then it's going to read final, acknowledge, and break, and then it's going to close the socket and basically close everything out like that. So that's basically how this RC client class works there. All right, let's see if this has finally come up yet, and looks like it's almost done down here. Indexing, and once everything goes from red to normal, we're good to go. Okay, so the first thing you want to do here is come over here and right click. You see you got this main activity here. We're going to right click here and select new Java class. And we're going to call this RC client. Okay, and now it's probably really small lettering here, but at least you can see everything from the website end here. Just paste all this stuff right in there. Make sure our IP address is right. I've already double checked that, and then we're good to go on that. So now you can see we got two classes in here. Now the main activity class, we're going to come back to the website and talk briefly about that here. Talk about it in the website here so you can see everything there. Inside of the main activity, you've got this override, this onCreate method here, which is essentially the equivalent of the main method for just regular Java programs there. In this particular layout, it's going to be pretty cheesy. There's going to be a text box, a little slider, which is like a slider bar from left to right. It's actually called a seek bar, and then a couple buttons, a start button and a stop button. That slider bar from left to right on the screen is actually going to control the steering itself there. So let's come here and go ahead and actually just want to talk about one more thing here. So the start button will basically set this pulse width to 1400. And if you remember from my previous tutorials here, I was already in there. Scroll up here. All these values here. The center is 1400. The right max is 1130, sorry, and 1670 for the left max. Okay. So when we click on that start button, it's going to basically set the pulse width to 1400 and call the thread.start. And pulse width is just a simple little instance variable up here, right? And we're going to be creating that RC client object right there. Well, actually the reference variable. The object will get called when, of course, when you call thread.start, it actually invokes this run method here. This will create the new RC client object. And then basically we'll be running through this loop here, right? And anytime pulse width changes, I've got old pulse width, right? And if it's not equal to new pulse width, it will then in turn call this turn method passing the pulse width there. So that's how it all works there. And then setting, of course, old pulse width, new pulse width. Now I've got if pulse width equals 1100, and I just basically set this as like a key flag, right? That will be the trigger to go ahead and close out of everything. So the stop method will call it pulse width as well, okay, with 1100. And 1100 will, of course, cause it to break and then call the close up method right here. All right, so let's go ahead and highlight all this. Come over here, make our interface, run this thing, and start playing with the steering wirelessly. So, all right, we want to expand the imports, grab all this, and just paste over the other stuff there. Okay, so we're going to get a few little errors there. App compat activity, I forgot to include that in the import list. Alt-Enter will just simply come up and put that in there. All right, so we don't have these buttons and the interface created yet, so we'll pop over to the this thing here, right? And I've got my Android phone plugged in right now, so when we run this, it'll actually just start and put it right on the phone there. Well, first thing, get rid of this Hello World text box. It's not, that thing is never really configured right. I don't know why they, whatever. Okay, I think I called this text view 3. Let me take a look. Yep, text view 3. And I'm just going to change this, the text view to actually say angle when this thing stops pausing here. There we go. All right, and let's go ahead and throw our seek bar on here. Right about there would be good. We'll drag this edge over to the left there, or right, and this edge over to the left. Okay, seek bar is good on the name on that. Okay, so our max is going to be the difference between 1670 and 1130, which is 540. Now there is no minimum on Android seek bars. It always sets it at 0. And we're going to set our current progress to 270, right? And that'll put this right in the middle there, okay? Then we're going to add this start button here. We'll call this thing button start. We'll give it a text of start. Add another button here. This is a really ugly interface, by the way. We'll be making it pretty in later videos, but this video is already going to be pretty long, so we'll call this stop and stop. Okay. Let's pop back here to our main activity. Everything that was red should now turn normal color there. One other thing I want to talk about is the pulse width here, the text there. I'm going to be setting that little text box there. I'll just be displaying the current value of pulse width there. So I add 1130 plus the value of the seek bar there. So as we move left to right, that value will vary between 0 and 540, which will be from our full basic left to full basic right on that. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and run this here. Initializing ADB. And when this comes up there, right, you should see connected devices, right? And this is the S7 Edge that's connected right there. You don't want to use these virtual devices. They won't have the Wi-Fi connection. They just won't work out very well. I suppose you can if you really want to toy around with that, but I'm not going to demonstrate it in this tutorial there. Okay, let's go ahead and select OK on that, and that will come down here. You'll see Gradle build running, and then this will install it to my Android device. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to readjust the camera here. Just pop back over here. Okay. Refocus. So everything's all the same. Here's the servo wires right here, running off the controllers, powered by this 7.2 volt 3000 milliamp. Oh, you know what? There's one more thing I want to do. I want to change the background here on this to black, because otherwise the white background is almost like shining a flashlight into the camera here. So we're going to just change the background. And sometimes I find it much easier. You could do it through the little interfaces over on the right there, but all right, so that'll make our background black. And over here, now our text, we need to change its text color to white. Text color equals 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, and now we'll pop back to there. All right, so that and that'll work. These will be a little bit bright on the screen there, but we'll be able to see the rest of everything like that. Okay, so let me just rerun that so I get that latest update on there, and then we'll unplug this and actually do the connections and stuff like that. So let's see, to configure this up, I want to bring up the remote control there, the RC servo running over here, and let's bring back up the window here. I'm going to make this just a little bit smaller here, and we'll just tilt this just a little bit more so I've got just a little bit more room for the app to be in there. Okay, so so there's the app, and it is a little bright. I apologize for that. It makes it a little hard to read, but yeah, basically, do refocus maybe and get a little better. It's not too good. But anyway, so the first thing I'm going to do is click on Start, right? And, oh, you know what? I forgot one thing here. So let me just go ahead and close that. I'm going to have to, one important thing, super important thing that we need to do is, I'm going to pop back over here to Android Studio. In the main activity, right up here at the top, I commented out this little uses permissions here. This needs to be in the manifest, otherwise we aren't going to be able to communicate over the internet. The manifest contains various different things, including security. And while I'm in here, I don't want this app to go into landscape mode, so I'm going to select the screen orientation and select it as portrait. Okay, now finally I'm ready. I'm forgetting these little steps there. So, okay, that's doing its thing. I think we're looking good there. That's listening, and let's go ahead and launching, and there we go. Okay. All right. Unplug this again. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and click on the start button here, which is the upper one here. Okay, and you can see over here that we've got our connection accepted, and now it's just basically blocking there. What is this? Oh, Xfinity popping up. Okay, so I don't know why my phone's connecting to my wireless. Anyway, whatever. So now we can just basically take this little slider here and move this from left to right. And you'll see that in the box up here, it's telling you what particular angle values that you're at there, right? And so I'm right-handed, so it's a little difficult to kind of get it going here. But you can really drag this thing across here almost as fast as you want. You know, you can really spaz out on this thing, or you can go, you know, just really, really slow from left to right. It's actually really, really responsive there. You can do number like this where you just tap kind of one end and the other. You know, you play around with all sorts of stuff here on that. But anyway, and of course you can see over here in the Raspberry Pi what's being sent over, right? So, get a hold on this. There we go, now I got the thing. So you can see all the different values going through on the server over there as we move this from, you know, from left to right. And it looks like I actually have my steering backwards, so that should be turning it the other direction. But anyway, I'll fix that in a future tutorial. Okay, then we'll go ahead and click on stop on that there. So that really pretty much about does it for this tutorial. It's about what I wanted to show you on that. You can see we closed our socket. Now it's re-listening again, you know, if we wanted to rerun the app. I did disable both the start and the stop buttons, so you just have to, you know, close it and restart that app if you'd like to there. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that, minimize that, and I'm just going to leave you with a quick final thought there, and that is stay tuned for my next few tutorials where I will go over how we will control the motor speed. And basically I'm going to be using an electronic speed controller for that there, and I'll go over some of the hiccups that I ran into while trying to work with that on the Raspberry Pi. So anyway, thanks for watching.